I once heard a man describe his wife. The moment I saw her, I was captivated by her beauty and couldn't resist. The moment she spoke, I knew someone had beat me to it. That was my Samantha, as stupid as she was beautiful. I met Sam when she was being fired for crashing my client's computer network by downloading a cute kitty video. Unfortunately, said kitty was actually a vicious malware lioness in disguise. She looked like she needed a friend, so I offered to carry the box containing her personal property as the head of security escorted her off the premises. Okay, I admit I thought I would have no trouble getting into her clothes if I befriended her. I soon learned she never wore any under her short skirts. Fast forward 6 months. Her childlike simplicity and unquenchable appetite for love won me over, and I asked her to move in with me. 6 months later, we were married. The night before our wedding, I took her arms and said, "I will be your champion, slaying dragons and breaching castles for your amusement. I pledge my eternal love and devotion." All I asked and demanded from her was absolute fidelity. "If you ever so much as kiss another man in a romantic way, our marriage is over. You will not get a second chance. No, I will destroy you and whoever was foolish enough to incur my wrath." "I love you and would never do that," Sam swore. The first 2 years of our marriage were so incredible, and all our friends were jealous. Sam excelled as a spoiled wife. She spent her days exercising or being pampered at the spa. We ate dinner out almost every night in Chicago's finest restaurants. I draped her magnificent body in designer clothes, suitably ornamented in the finest jewelry. I loved showing her off. Then one day she announced she was bored and wanted to get a job. Try as I might, I couldn't shake her determination. I even offered to stake her to her own business, a high-end boutique, anything she wanted. "No, I want to do this on my own," she answered. Much later, I learned 2 divorced friends from the health club had sowed the seeds of discontent in my wife. These bitter women had lost their husbands to younger women and took a perverted joy in ruining happy marriages. Week after week, they worked on Sam until they convinced her she was not being appreciated by me and the key to her freedom was getting a job so she would have her own money. So Sam set off into the workforce in search of a position that would complete her. Now, a beautiful woman wearing a $500 dress has no problem getting an interview. Her problem came when they asked her hard questions like, "What office skills do you possess?" After 3 months, she had been on dozens of interviews. However, no one had so much as called her back to say, "Sorry, we don't have a position for your unique skill set." At least that's what the form letter I send out to unqualified losers says. Then one afternoon, she came home so excited she could barely speak. She had been hired as a personal assistant. I asked her a few easy questions like who hired you and what your job responsibilities are. Sam forgot the company's name but was sure she could find it again. The only thing she remembered was the position involved travel. "With whom?" I asked. She rummaged through her $1,000 Gucci bag and found a business card. "There," she announced. "I'll be working for Andrew V. Carter and Associates." The card was a cheap rectangle of white cardstock with black ink. It had no color or graphics, just Andrew V. Carter, president, CEO, and a phone number. What a cheap jerk, I thought. And what exactly does Andrew V. Carter and Associates do? "It has something to do with importing, or was it exporting things?" she answered. I took my wife in my arms and looked her square in the eyes. "Samantha, I have a bad feeling about this. Let me check him out." That led to our first ever knockdown, drag-out argument. "You don't want me to succeed. You only want me to hang on your arm like a Barbie doll." Truth be told, that was really all she was qualified to do. Sam was as stubborn as could be. She dug in her heels and refused to listen to anything I had to say. She squared her jaw and glared at me. I knew that look meant she would take a beating rather than admit she was wrong. It tore my heart, but I said, "I hope it's not too late when you open your eyes to the truth." I discreetly had my investigators launch a full investigation of Carter. On Sunday evening, I received an email with a full dossier. Carter was a two-bit importer of knockoff products which they sold to dollar stores. A significant portion of their business was generated at regional trade shows, which is where Sam came in. The present sales staff was all male, age 50 plus. Sales were way down as Chinese manufacturers were cutting out the middlemen, jobbers as they were known in the trade, and selling directly. With a big trade show coming up in New York, Cater had met with his sales staff to brainstorm a solution. The future of the company hung on this show. The idea had been floated that the easiest way to increase sales was to have a beautiful woman in a short make that very short skirt and revealing blouse man the booth. Sam had a closet full of outfits that met the uniform requirements. It was obvious Carter didn't want a personal assistant. He wanted a guy magnet. Things were pretty quiet on Sunday. On Monday morning, Sam was dressed to the nines. I complimented her and offered to drive her to work. She surprised me and said yes. I surprised her with an Italian leather briefcase. Sam accepted my gift with, "I'm going to do you proud." Carter's warehouse had definitely seen its better days. It was a rambling three-story building which, if it ever knew paint, was only a nodding acquaintance at best, and it was a long time ago. Even the sign was faded. Sam looked nervous as she surveyed the ramshackle building. After a couple of minutes, she leaned towards me and planted a kiss on my lips, an act which she had denied me since Friday. "I guess this is it." "I guess it is." "I'll pick you up at 5, I replied. She kissed me again and said, "I love you." "I love you too," I responded. That day dragged on forever. I was waiting at the end of the block for the clock to flash 5. When it did, I pulled up in front of the main entrance. A score of men wearing cheap suits walked out in a gaggle. That must be the sales force, I thought. A few minutes later, a handful of older women left. All were dressed for working in a warehouse. I waited 10 minutes before I entered the lobby. I could hear Sam laughing in the distance. I spied a bell on the receptionist's desk and rang it with vigor. My wife called out, "I'll be right out." The moment I met her new boss, I immediately recognized him as Lothario. The bastard didn't even extend his hand to shake mine. He just gave me a smarmy smile. The moment we pulled away, I warned my wife, "He watched you like a lion stalking a gazelle." "Don't be silly, he's just a good salesman. Always on," she answered. "Good salesman, I highly doubt it. The man wholesales knockoffs made by slave labor. He, like his products, appeals to the dregs of civilization." Sam didn't speak again until I pulled up at one of our favorite restaurants. Tuesday morning, Sam again dressed like she was going to a dance. When I asked her why she was so dressed up to work in a dilapidated warehouse, she announced she knew how to get to work and would be driving herself. She walked out without answering my question or kissing me goodbye. That evening, she came home excited after a day learning their product line. She even had a bag full of junk. I did my best to feign interest as she described each. 3 bad things happened in the second week. Sam, still overdressing, began going to lunch with Carter so they could discuss the product line. She also started to work late with him to prepare for the New York trade show. The last straw was she stopped answering my phone when I called because they were too busy with work. The storm hit the house on Thursday when Sam came home a few minutes before 10. I gave her an ultimatum. Quit the job or else. "Don't be such a drama queen. It's just a training period. After the trade show, things will settle down." I begged her to quit, and again offered to stake her to her own business, a store in the mall, anything she wanted. Again, she demanded I let her succeed on her own. On Friday, Sam ignored 10 phone calls and didn't get home until after 11. I was waiting at the door when she came in. "Is there a problem with your phone?" I asked. Sam instantly became a raging woman because I didn't trust her. "I would never stand in your way if you got a big career opportunity." "Big career opportunity? You're making minimum wage. The jewelry you have on is worth more than his whole business." Sam spit venom with her response. Why don't you trust me? I trust you. I don't trust Carter. I have seen far too many guys like him. Besides, what exactly are your qualifications for this job other than being beautiful? Is there a reason why you're dressing like a model to learn about a 99-cent piece of plastic in a filthy warehouse? The storm really hit the house. We have a 3-day-long trade convention in New York next week, and I'm going whether you like it or not. Get used to it. Then get used to living alone, because if it goes like this, I'm afraid it will. I won't be here when you return. Our marriage will be over. I can't believe you said that. You and I should be planning how we'll spend my paycheck check. We could save it for a vacation to Europe, anywhere you want. Europe? Hawaii? Are you high? You're making $13 an hour before taxes. You couldn't even afford to buy us a steak dinner with your paycheck, I replied. Sam stormed out of the room and locked herself in the bathroom. We did not speak all weekend. On Monday morning, a limousine picked her up. I kissed her one last time and said, "You've made your choice. I hope you can live with it." She didn't respond. It took some doing, but I had arranged for a private investigator to get the seat across from her and Carter on the flight east. The cheap bastard flew coach. My man guaranteed he would be able to provide audio and video of their entire trip. I was foolish enough to have expected a phone call from Sam to say they had arrived safely. Instead, I heard from my private investigator. They were giddy as schoolgirls who thought they were getting away with something. Carter kept putting his hand on her thigh. She protested the first few times, but finally let him touch her. I damn near smashed my phone. He then said he would be handing off surveillance to an associate so they don't recognize him. I had a hell of a time not calling Sam and telling her I knew what they were doing, but that hadn't worked before, so I invested my time in planning phase 2 of my plan. That evening, I received a detailed text from my private investigator. They spent most of the day in business-related functions. Unfortunately, at 6, they went to their rooms and changed for dinner. I didn't recognize the little black dress Sam had on. The detective's instructions were not to intervene unless it looked like Carter was forcing Sam to do something. They were to observe and document. It was killing me, but she had to choose our marriage of her own free will. But that wouldn't stop me from giving it one last try. I watched the video of them walking into the restaurant hand in hand in real time. I called my wife, but it went straight to voicemail. So I called the restaurant and had Mrs. Samantha Weatherstone paged. She was none too happy I was checking up on her. "I worked hard all day and am having dinner in a snack shop. You have some nerve calling me to check up," she answered. "Well, maybe if you had answered any of my calls or texts, I wouldn't have to track you down. Samantha, I love you more than life itself. That is why I'm giving you a last chance to save our marriage. I know you're not eating in a snack shop. This is the first time you've ever lied to me, and I'm willing to forgive you if you tell Carter you quit. There will be a first-class ticket waiting for you at the airport. Please, if you love me, if our marriage..." The phone went dead. My wife had hung up on me. On us. My private investigator streamed me a video of Sam drinking with Carter. That bastard heard our conversation, and I could tell he sensed he had picked right when he hired Sam. He acted like he owned her, pawing her as he plied her with liquor. An hour later, my man sent a video of them going into his room. I had to turn my phone off because I couldn't bear to watch the feed from the cameras they planted in Carter's room. Later, after a couple of stiff drinks, I listened and heard him saying stuff like, "What a shame it was her husband didn't want her to succeed." He said I was jealous of her success. "Stick with me and I'll make you the most successful saleswoman in the business." My idiot wife ate up his line of nonsense and ended our marriage. My next call was to some associates at the convention center in New York. Carter had already verified his truck had arrived that morning and was waiting to be unloaded. Inside was the booth, the largest and most lavish at the trade show, and thousands of catalogs and tens of thousands of free samples. The booth would occupy twice as much space as his largest competitor. It featured the finest in video and lighting effects. Minutes later, Carter's 40-foot intermodal container vanished from the loading dock. It would turn up empty a week later at a truck stop in New Jersey. I spent the night sitting in my recliner hoping against hope Sam had come to her senses. The next morning, my private investigator confirmed they spent the night in his room and had intimacy. He treated your wife like a street woman. The moment they got in the room, he pulled her dress off. Then he pushed her on the bed, took off the clothes, and did the deed. He didn't wear a protection. 30 seconds later, he was finished, brushed his teeth, and announced he was going to sleep. I began to cry. After a few minutes, your wife rolled onto the other side of the bed. The private investigator said it didn't look like she had a moment's sleep. I could hear her crying most of the night. I tried to control my anger as I placed 2 more calls, this time local. I said exactly 1 word to each: go. The next morning, I had the concierge slip a note under Carter's door addressed to my wife. I called your room all night, but there was no answer. I guess that means goodbye forever. The private investigator said she screamed and started crying hysterically about how she made a huge mistake, and Carter had better stay far away from her or else. What do I care? I've had a lot better than you. Now get your clothes on, you've got a job to do. He picked up her dress off the floor and threw it at her. Sam begged him to give her a return ticket. He laughed in her face and called her a stupid, cheating woman. If you want to get back home, you better get your back ready to tease my customers. Sam ramped up the volume. You got me drunk and raped me. I didn't force you to do anything. If you call the police, they'll take one look at how you were dressed and know you're a cheating woman. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was one of the salesmen. Sam grabbed her dress and scurried into the bathroom. Carter opened the door naked, holding Sam's clothes. He wanted to make sure Angelo knew he had scored. Boss, we've got a big problem. I was in the convention hall checking out our space, but nothing was there. What do you mean nothing was there? Carter asked. I mean nothing. The booth isn't there. None of the boxes. No samples. Nothing. I talked to a guy at the dock and he said the truck wasn't there. Carter turned pure white. All he could manage to say was, damn. It took a while for Sam to compose herself enough to call me. She evidently decided to play it stupid, a frame of mind at which she excelled. I didn't answer, but let it go straight to voicemail. Even though I knew it wouldn't change anything, I had to know if Sam was going to own up to her actions. I was sorry I listened because all she did was lie. I'm sorry, honey. I took a sleeping pill and didn't hear the phone. She had the nerve to say, I love you. Please call me when you get this message. She called every 10 minutes after that. I ignored everyone. Instead, I called my lawyer and told him to prepare the divorce papers. Carter, meanwhile, was melting down. The trade show opened in 30 minutes and he had nothing. He began making frantic phone calls. The police were no help. Cameras covering the truck dock showed a white truck without any license plates or name had driven away with it last night. They said a detective would be by in an hour or so to investigate. Carter called the warehouse and told them to get together all the catalogs and brochures they had and get them on the next flight to New York. There were pretty slim pickings. Carter ended up spending the day sitting on a borrowed bar stool in front of a cardboard sign he had made at an office supply store. His sales staff looked awkward trying to sell invisible products. Sam looked like hell as she stood by herself in a corner, crying softly. Andrew Carter and Associates quickly became the subject of ridicule among the attendees. His Chinese competitors, whose booth was right across the aisle, smiled politely and bowed towards him every time they passed out one of their endless bags of swag. A pallet full of boxes finally showed up late on the second day of the show. Their contents, however, were outdated catalogs and last year's no longer hot products. My man said a few people stopped by to talk to Carter, but no one wanted to place an order with a jobber who most agreed wouldn't be in business in 3 months. Instead, his competition sucked up all the orders. By the end of the second day, Carter was a broken man. He finally acquiesced to Sam's demand that he let her go home. He was filled with rage as he screamed, "When we get back to Chicago, I never want to see you again." Carter gathered his sales staff and told them to soldier on even as he beat a hasty retreat. He directed one of them to trade in their tickets and get them a flight home as soon as possible. Sam wasn't very happy when she learned the flight didn't leave until 10 the next morning and spent the night locked in her room. She dutifully texted me her flight information. Flight 901 arriving at O'Hare Field tomorrow morning at noon. Then she added, "I miss you." Even though they sat next to each other, neither spoke. Carter was too busy trying to figure out how to restructure his line of credit since he no longer had any receivables to collateralize it. Sam stared straight ahead and prayed the whole flight that she would be able to salvage her marriage. One of the fringe benefits of working for a venture capitalist is I knew people who could make things happen without wasting time on paperwork. These are people who exist in the darkest of shadows, and a lot of them owed me favors. Big favors. The 2 phone calls I made earlier had put everything in motion. I knew she would be wheels up on the airplane at 9 a.m. local time. I waited until the plane was airborne and she was out of communication to cancel both of our cell phones. Next, I canceled all of our credit cards and transferred every last dime we had in the bank to a shill account. By noon, the money would be untraceable. Some jerk in a black robe might say she's entitled to half, but she can go flip herself. There was a knock on my door, and a team of movers began packing all of my personal property for storage. I reclaimed all of the jewelry that hadn't made the trip to New York. 20 minutes after the movers left, a bulldozer and a small crane were unloaded in my driveway. No questions were asked, they just began reducing my $500,000 house to a neat pile of rubble. When they were done, they also vanished into the mist like the mythical Brigadoon. My detective had a seat the row behind Sam. He said neither spoke a single word on the flight. The moment they landed, she tried to power up her cell phone. She got really nervous when she learned her service was canceled. Sam damn near ran down the jetway to get to a payphone. A man in a black suit holding a sign with her name stood in front of the pack of departing passengers. She assumed it was the limo driver to take her home and asked if she could borrow his phone. "Are you Mrs. Samantha Weatherstone?" "Yes, I am. Now, could I please borrow your phone?" she answered. He handed her a large manila envelope. "You've been served, and no, you can't borrow my phone." Sam was getting frantic. "I don't see our driver," Carter said. "Get the hell away from me or I'll scream." Sam found a phone bank and tried my cell phone. She got "this number has been disconnected" message. Then she tried my office number, the one I told her was for emergencies only, and was advised no one by that name worked there. I had already left for my new position at our Los Angeles office. Terror gripped her as she remembered the envelope. She tore it open and read, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Samantha dropped to her knees, sobbing. Pictures of her naked with her boss fell out. What she didn't know was his wife was getting an identical set of pictures delivered at that same instant. Airport security was alerted to a woman having a medical problem, and a team arrived to render assistance. One of them claimed her bags while the paramedics tried to determine what her problem was. A security guard spotted the divorce decree and discreetly passed the word. She begged them to help her get a taxi. "I have to get home before it's too late," she begged. Since she wasn't trying to drive, they cooperated and got her a cab. She pleaded with the driver to go faster. When they got close to her tiny subdivision, she sat forward and began telling the driver where to turn. As they rounded the bend, Sam looked puzzled, then let out a blood-curdling scream as she realized her house no longer existed. The driver wanted to get away from the crazy lady and demanded his $45 fare. She was numb as she handed him her credit card. He tried running it. "It is no good." She tried every card she had. All were rejected. "If you do not have money, I will call police," said the driver. Sam started rifling her pockets and finally came up with the fare. The driver placed her bags on the sidewalk and laid rubber to get away. Samantha dropped to the ground. She could barely breathe. Everything was gone. All her dreams were shattered. Carter's day ended as badly as it had begun. A couple of my associates followed him to his North Shore home. They were driving a pickup truck they borrowed when the driver ran into a convenience store for a pack of cigarettes. They watched from down the street as Carter got out of the limo and walked to the front door, his shoulders drooping. He never even made it to the front door before his wife charged outside and thundered, "Keep walking, you no-good cheating son of a blip." She waved the pictures of him with Sam on his face. Carter was speechless as his wife verbally assaulted him. A couple of the neighbors came outside to see what was going on. Carter's BMW was parked in the driveway, and he was able to get inside while she pounded on the windshield. "I'm going to divorce your cheating back." She picked his suitcase up and smashed it against the glass, shattering it. Carter backed over his lawn to make his getaway. He never even noticed he was being followed. Carter stopped at a bar and ordered a double Scotch neat. He washed that down with another. An hour and 3 stiff drinks later, Carter made things easy as he drove to his warehouse. That same night, Andrew Carter and Associates' offices and warehouse burned to the ground. It was the lead story on the news for 2 days. It was the most impressive fire, with trucks from 7 suburban departments joining in the battle. You might remember the flames licking up to the sky as they purified the earth from the stench of Andrew Carter. It was still smoldering the next day when firemen were able to enter to strike down hot spots. The fire burned so intensely from all the paper and plastic that it took another 2 days for the arson investigators to find the charred remains of Carter. The skull had a big hole in it. A pistol with 1 bullet missing was found a few feet away. The body was so consumed the coroner couldn't tell Carter had been tortured for over 6 hours before he was allowed to blow his brains out. They were able to verify him using dental records. I hear the pain was so intense he begged to be allowed to kill himself. They were very careful not to break any bones. But boy, did they inflict pain with a propane blowtorch, melting his flesh off the bone. The coroner's inquest panel ruled his death a suicide. Their sequence of events said he was despondent over the missing truck and complete failure at the trade show, followed by his wife throwing him out for having an affair. Then he got drunk, turned off the sprinkler system, and set fire to his warehouse. As the flames approached his office, he placed a gun barrel in his mouth and committed suicide. The insurance company also had a team of arson investigators combing through what little was left of the sprawling building. Their colleagues in forensic accounting verified Carter's loan would have been called and pursued their investigation as an arson-for-profit fire. Eventually, they denied his widow's insurance claim. Because one man couldn't keep his pants closed, his wife and children lost their homes, 20 people lost their jobs, and I lost the only woman I ever loved. As for the 2 witches who caused all this sadness, I was assured they would never cause anyone trouble again. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I used to believe in forever. I used to believe in the promises we make when we're standing at altars, surrounded by flowers and hope, and the foolish certainty that love conquers all. My name is Andrew Martinez. I'm 33 years old, and I've spent the last 5 years learning that some promises are just pretty lies, wrapped in white silk. Rachel and I met on one of those dating apps that promise to find your soulmate through algorithms and shared interests. She was 25 then, with honey blonde hair that caught the light and a laugh that made me forget whatever clever opening line I'd been rehearsing. We both loved those cooking competition shows where chefs create miracles under pressure, and we'd spend hours debating whether Gordon Ramsay was actually mean or just passionate. We both dreamed of beach vacations where the biggest decision was whether to have another piña colada. For 2 years, it felt effortless. Date nights turned into long weekends. Long weekends turned into shared keys and toothbrushes left on bathroom counters. She'd curl up against me during scary movies, and I'd make her coffee exactly how she liked it. 2 sugars, splash of vanilla creamer. When I proposed at sunset on Malibu Beach, the same place we'd had our 3rd date, she cried real tears. I thought they were tears of joy. Our wedding was everything she'd dreamed of. a small vineyard in Napa Valley. String lights draped between olive trees, her grandmother's pearl necklace gleaming against her collarbone. Rachel looked radiant in her dress, the kind of beautiful that makes men write terrible poetry and empty their bank accounts. I remember thinking as she walked down that makeshift aisle that I was the luckiest bastard alive. I'd found my person, my partner, my forever. The prenup conversation happened 3 months before the wedding, right when we were deep in the chaos of seating charts and flower arrangements and all the little details that somehow matter enormously when you're planning the best day of your life. Rachel brought it up over dinner at our favorite Italian place, sliding the idea across the table like she was discussing weekend plans. "I think we should get a prenup," she said casually, twirling pasta around her fork. I almost laughed. "We're not exactly rolling in family money here, Rach. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine." "Isn't that the point?" I replied. But she'd already thought it through. She had researched attorneys, read articles, prepared arguments about protecting ourselves from future complications. "It's not about the money," she insisted. "It's about clarity, about making sure we're choosing each other for the right reasons." 2 weeks later, we sat in Attorney Samuel's office on the 15th floor of a downtown building, surrounded by mahogany paneling and leather chairs that probably cost more than my car. Rachel looked confident, prepared, like she was signing a business contract instead of defining the terms of our love. The document was thick, full of legal language that Samuel explained in careful detail. Most of it was standard stuff: division of assets, debt responsibility, inheritance protections. But one clause stood out, printed in stark black text that would later burn itself into my memory. In the event of proven adultery by either party, the unfaithful spouse forfeits all claims to marital assets, alimony, and property acquired during the marriage. I signed without hesitation. Hell, I almost felt proud of Rachel for thinking ahead, for being practical about something I'd never considered. I'd never cheat anyway, I told her as the ink dried on our signatures. She smiled and reached for my hand across that polished conference table. "Me neither," she replied. "That's why it's easy to agree to." After the wedding, we settled into a life that seemed perfectly balanced. I worked my way up at Caldwell Financial Consulting, managing client portfolios and building toward partnership. Rachel quit her receptionist job at the dental office and focused on making our house a home. We'd agreed to wait on kids, establish our careers first, travel while we were young, build something solid before adding to it. Our Bahamas honeymoon was everything we'd dreamed of. White sand beaches that stretched for miles, water so blue it looked fake, sunset dinners where we held hands across candlelit tables and talked about our future. We'd made it work. We'd built something real. I should have paid more attention to why she wanted that prenup so badly. But I was in love, and love makes you stupid. Love makes you sign documents without questioning motives. Love makes you trust completely, even when trust is the most dangerous thing you can give away. I was about to learn that lesson in the cruelest way possible. 3 months ago, everything changed with a phone call from my boss. "Andrew, we're promoting you to senior regional manager," he announced. The words I'd been working toward for 5 years, the recognition I'd earned through late nights, and weekend calls, and slowly building a reputation as the guy who could close impossible deals. The promotion came with a significant pay increase, enough to finally renovate our kitchen, maybe take that European vacation Rachel had been dreaming about. But it also came with travel requirements that made my stomach clench with unexpected anxiety. 3 to 4 days, once or twice monthly, visiting clients across the region. Seattle, Atlanta, Denver, Chicago, cities I'd only seen through airport windows. I brought it up over dinner that night. Chinese takeout spread across our dining room table. The promotion news sitting heavy between us like an uninvited guest. "The money's incredible," I said, trying to focus on the positive. "We could finally gut that kitchen, get the marble countertops you wanted." Rachel's face lit up in a way that surprised me. "Andrew, that's amazing!" she exclaimed. "You've worked so hard for this." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You deserve this promotion. Don't you dare feel guilty about the travel." Her enthusiasm felt genuine, warm, supportive. I kissed her forehead across the table, grateful to have a partner who understood ambition, who celebrated my success without resentment or worry. "You sure you'll be okay with me gone so much?" I asked. "I'll miss you," she said, and her smile looked so sincere I felt foolish for even asking. "But this is your career, our future. I'll be fine." The first trip to Atlanta was exactly what I expected. 3 days of client meetings in sterile conference rooms, lonely dinners at expensive steakhouses where I ate overpriced salmon while checking emails. I called Rachel every night, texted throughout the day, maintaining the connection across the distance. She seemed engaged, interested in my meetings, telling me about her days, lunch with her friend Melissa, organizing the guest bedroom closet, catching up on our cooking shows without me. "Don't feel bad about missing Hell's Kitchen," she laughed during our second night call. "I'm recording everything so we can watch together when you get back." Boston was more of the same. 3 days of presentations and client dinners and hotel rooms that all looked identical. Beige walls, generic art, windows that didn't open. Rachel and I video called each night before bed, and she always looked perfect on camera. Hairstyled, makeup done, wearing the silk pajama set I'd bought her for Christmas. I never questioned why she was always so put together for our calls. Never wondered if maybe she was getting dressed up for someone other than her husband. The third trip to Denver was when I first noticed something subtle, something that should have triggered every alarm in my head, but instead floated past like background noise. Rachel seemed almost encouraging about the travel, more enthusiastic than a wife should be about her husband's absence. "You should stay an extra day if you need to," she suggested while helping me pack. "Don't rush back on my account. Give yourself time to actually close that Miller contract." I found it odd, but dismissed it as her being supportive, understanding the pressure I was under. Rachel had always been considerate that way, putting my career needs before her own preferences. I kissed her goodbye at the door, my suitcase in one hand, coffee mug in the other, feeling grateful for a wife who made sacrifice look so easy. The routine became familiar. Airport goodbyes where Rachel would kiss me and tell me to be safe. Hotel check-ins in cities that all started blending together. Client dinners where I smiled and nodded while thinking about getting home. I'd video call Rachel every night before bed, and she'd be there on my phone screen, perfectly framed, perfectly composed, asking about my day and telling me about hers. She was always available for our scheduled calls, but increasingly unavailable for spontaneous ones. "Sorry, I was in the shower," she would explain, or "I was at the grocery store and couldn't hear my phone," or "I was helping Mom reorganize her garage." Always reasonable explanations. Always delivered with a smile that looked so genuine I felt guilty for even noticing the pattern. I started noticing other things too, small changes that felt positive at the time. Rachel had started paying more attention to her appearance. New lingerie I'd find in the laundry, yoga classes she'd mentioned joining, a gym membership she'd gotten to stay busy while you're traveling. She looked incredible, glowing with a confidence that I stupidly attributed to our financial success and the stability my promotion provided. The fourth trip to Chicago was supposed to be routine. 3 days. Major contract negotiation with Brennan Industries. Home by Friday night with hopefully the biggest deal of my career locked down. But Monday night, my client Jim Brennan called me in my hotel room, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Andrew, I'm sorry, but my father had a heart attack this morning," he said wearily. "I'm flying to Tampa tonight. We'll have to postpone until next month." Suddenly, I had a chance to surprise my wife, to come home 2 days early and maybe take her out for a celebration dinner. Maybe start working on that kitchen renovation we'd been planning. I booked the first flight home Tuesday morning, grinning in the cab as I imagined her face when I walked through our front door. I wish to God I'd stayed in that hotel room. I wish I'd never heard of the Brennan account. I wish I'd been a failure at my job and never earned that promotion. Because sometimes the best opportunities lead to the worst discoveries. And the surprise you plan becomes the nightmare you can't escape. The silver BMW in my driveway hit me like a physical blow. I sat in the taxi, staring at that unfamiliar car parked where only Rachel's Honda and my Ford usually sat, and felt something cold and terrible unfold in my chest. 9:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, and there was a strange car in my driveway. Rachel didn't have friends who drove BMWs. Rachel didn't have friends who visited on Tuesday mornings when she thought I was 3 states away. "This the right address?" the taxi driver asked, looking between me and the house. "Yeah," I answered, my voice sounding strange, distant. "Yeah, this is right." I paid him with hands that trembled slightly, grabbed my bag, and stood on the sidewalk staring at my own home like it was a crime scene. Because maybe it was. Maybe it had been for months, and I was just the last person to figure it out. I could have walked through the front door. I could have called out, "Honey, I'm home," and watched whatever was happening implode in real time. But something calculating took over. Something that understood the importance of witnesses and evidence and making sure the truth couldn't be twisted later. I called David Hayes, Rachel's father, from my cell phone while standing in my own driveway. "Andrew, is everything okay?" He answered immediately, his voice carrying immediate concern. David had always liked me, treated me like the son he'd never had. "I'm not sure," I replied, letting genuine worry color my voice. "I came home early from Chicago and Rachel's not answering her phone. There's a car in our driveway I don't recognize and I'm hearing strange noises from inside." "What kind of strange noises?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but something feels wrong. Could you and Margaret come over? I don't want to call the police if it's nothing, but we'll be right there," he said without hesitation. 15 minutes. That's how long I stood in my driveway, staring at that BMW, listening to the sounds floating down from our bedroom window. Rhythmic sounds, unmistakable sounds, sounds that should have been mine and Rachel's, private and sacred, but were happening with someone else while I was supposed to be 1,000 miles away. David and Margaret arrived in their white Buick, faces tight with worry. Margaret practically ran up the driveway, her maternal instincts in overdrive. "Andrew, what's happening?" she asked breathlessly. "Is Rachel okay?" I maintained my performance, the concerned husband who feared the worst but hoped for the best. "Her phone's been going straight to voicemail." "That's not like her." I gestured toward the BMW. "And I have no idea whose car that is." David studied the BMW with narrowed eyes. "Georgia plates," he observed. "You don't know anyone from Georgia?" "No one," I answered. We approached the front door together, a family united in concern. I had my key ready, but I hesitated, putting a finger to my lips. "Listen," I whispered. The sounds were clearer now, floating down from the second floor. Breathing, movement, the unmistakable rhythm of bodies moving together. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. David's face hardened with understanding. "Quietly," I whispered, unlocking the door. We moved through our living room like burglars, past the couch where Rachel and I watched movies, past the dining table where we'd planned our future, past the kitchen where she made coffee every morning and kissed me goodbye. The sounds grew louder as we climbed the stairs, more urgent, more desperate. Our bedroom door was slightly ajar. I threw it open. Rachel was on top of a man I'd never seen before, dark hair, athletic build, probably my age. They were completely naked, completely lost in each other, completely oblivious to the fact that Rachel's husband and parents were standing in the doorway watching their betrayal unfold in high definition. The split second before Rachel saw us is frozen in my memory forever. Her head thrown back in pleasure, eyes closed, moving with an urgency and passion I hadn't seen from her in months. This wasn't mechanical or obligatory. This was hunger. This was desire. This was everything I thought was mine, given freely to a stranger. Then she opened her eyes and saw us. The scream that tore from her throat could have shattered glass. The man, I'd later learn his name was Tyler Cross, scrambled backward like a spider, trying to cover himself, his eyes wide with terror. Rachel grabbed for the sheet, for her robe, for anything to hide what we'd already seen. But I was done hiding, done pretending, done playing the fool. I crossed the room in 3 steps, grabbed Tyler by his hair and yanked him off my wife and out of my bed. He was soft, panic-weak, stumbling naked across my bedroom floor. I drove my fist into his jaw with every ounce of rage I'd been building for months without knowing it. Tyler crashed into our dresser, family photos scattering to the floor, including our wedding picture. David was right behind me, grabbing Tyler's arm, driving a knee into his ribs. "You son of a bitch," David shouted. "In my daughter's house." Meanwhile, Margaret turned on Rachel with a fury I'd never seen from the gentle woman who'd taught Sunday school for 20 years. Rachel was struggling into her robe, sobbing, trying to speak, and Margaret slapped her hard across the face. "How could you?" Margaret demanded. "How could you do this to Andrew?" "To your marriage?" "Mom, please, you don't understand," Rachel began. Margaret slapped her again, harder. "I understand perfectly," she snapped. "You're a cheating witch." David and I dragged Tyler down the stairs, his feet barely touching the ground, his naked body pathetic and vulnerable. We threw him out the front door onto the driveway, where he crawled toward his BMW, sobbing, trying to cover himself with his hands. "If I see you on my street again," David shouted after him, "I'll kill you myself." Tyler drove away naked, his clothes still scattered across my bedroom floor. When we returned inside, Rachel sat on our couch wearing only her robe, mascara streaking down her cheeks, hands shaking. Margaret stood over her like an avenging angel. "Please," Rachel whispered. "Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "Explain how you've been f***ing another man in our bed while I've been working to support you? Explain how you encouraged my travel so you could have more time with him? Explain which part, Rachel?" She tried to reach for me. I stepped back like she was radioactive. "It was a mistake," she said desperately. "It just happened. I was lonely and—" "Stop," David commanded, his voice cutting through her excuses. "Just stop." Margaret looked at her daughter with disgust. "You're not coming to our house," she declared. "Mom," Rachel started. "You're not our daughter anymore," Margaret replied coldly. I walked to the front door and opened it. "Get out," I ordered. Rachel looked between her parents and me, desperate, realizing that she had nowhere to go. "No one to run to, no safety net to catch her fall. Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. "Not my problem," I answered. David and I physically lifted her from the couch and walked her to the door. She was still in her robe, still crying, still begging for forgiveness that wasn't coming. We set her on the front lawn and went back inside. I locked the door behind us. Through the window, I watched Rachel sit in our front yard in her robe, surrounded by the ruins of her life, with nowhere to run and no one to save her. Then I called my attorney. The prenup Rachel had insisted on was about to destroy her completely. Funny how that works. The 60 days following that Tuesday morning played out like a perfectly orchestrated legal symphony, each movement building toward Rachel's complete and total destruction. My attorney, Patricia Goldman, had been practicing family law for 25 years. When I called her from my living room while Rachel sat crying on the front lawn, Patricia's voice carried the cool satisfaction of a professional who'd seen this scenario play out many times before. "Andrew, you said there were witnesses to the adultery?" she asked. "Her own parents saw everything," I confirmed. "Perfect," she replied. "File for divorce immediately. With parental testimony confirming adultery, that prenup becomes a nuclear weapon." Patricia wasn't wrong. Within a week, divorce papers were served to Rachel at the motel where she'd been staying since her parents refused to take her in. The prenup's adultery clause was airtight. Rachel would receive nothing. No claim to our house, no access to our joint savings, no alimony, no split of my retirement accounts or investment portfolio. 5 years of marriage, and she'd walk away with exactly what she'd brought into it. Nothing. Rachel tried to fight it, of course. She hired a lawyer named Bradley Taylor with money she'd borrowed from a friend, one of the few people who still returned her calls. Taylor was young, inexperienced, probably fresh out of law school and desperate for clients. During the preliminary hearing, he argued that the prenup was punitive, unfair, designed to trap his client in an impossible situation. Judge Vincent had heard it all before. "Your client signed this document voluntarily with legal representation present before the marriage occurred," he stated firmly. She was specifically advised about the adultery clause and its consequences. "The prenup is enforceable." Rachel's face crumpled when Vincent delivered his ruling. She looked across the courtroom at me with eyes that begged for mercy I no longer possessed. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no pity, just cold, empty justice. The details of Rachel's downward spiral reached me through mutual acquaintances who seemed to think I'd want updates on my ex-wife's misery. I didn't ask for the information, but I didn't stop it either. Knowledge is power, and I was collecting both. Tyler Cross, her knight in shining BMW, had vanished completely. Rachel called him dozens of times that first week, sent text messages that went unanswered, even showed up at his apartment building only to learn he'd broken his lease and moved out of state. Tyler had been looking for a fun affair with a bored housewife, not a messy divorce and public humiliation. When the situation exploded, he ran like the coward he was. Rachel's desperate attempts to contact me were equally futile. Long emails appeared in my inbox, rambling apologies, promises that it had meant nothing, pleas for financial help, offers to do anything to earn my forgiveness. I deleted them all without reading past the first sentence. Whatever she had to say, I didn't want to hear it. Her parents maintained their position with a ruthlessness that surprised me. David and Margaret had built their reputation in our small community on traditional values, church attendance, and moral authority. Their daughter's public adultery had humiliated them beyond forgiveness. When Rachel called begging to come home, Margaret hung up on her. When she appeared at their door crying, David told her to leave and never come back. She made her choice, David told me over coffee 6 weeks after the discovery. She chose to throw away everything good in her life for a stranger. That's not the daughter we raised. Meanwhile, I was thriving in ways that surprised me. The promotion continued paying dividends. Without Rachel's constant need for attention and expensive tastes, I had more money than I'd ever had before. I traveled less by choice now, having proven myself valuable enough to delegate more responsibilities to subordinates. Work felt easier, less stressful, more rewarding. I started dating casually. Nothing serious, just dinners and companionship with women who understood that I wasn't ready for anything complicated. I joined a gym, lost the 20 pounds I'd gained during my marriage, began feeling physically strong again. Friends commented on how good I looked, how much lighter I seemed, as if a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I drove past the diner where Rachel had found work. It was past 9 p.m. near closing time, and I could see her through the window serving the last few customers of the night. She looked exhausted, older. Her beauty faded like a photograph left in sunlight. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her makeup minimal, her movements mechanical and tired. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pity. Just complete and total indifference. A year later, I still have dinner with her parents every few weeks. Rachel has no one. That's not cruelty. That's just consequences. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I sit across from David and Margaret at Giovanni's, the same Italian restaurant where Rachel first suggested the prenup. It's become our regular spot for monthly dinners, a tradition that feels more genuine than anything from my marriage ever did. "How's work treating you?" David asks, cutting into his chicken parmesan. "Better every day," I answer honestly. "The promotion keeps paying off. I'm traveling maybe twice a quarter now by choice. Built up enough trust to delegate the smaller accounts." Margaret smiles warmly. "You look good, Andrew," she observes. "Healthy, happy." I am happy, in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Life has a clarity now that I never experienced during those 5 years of marriage. No walking on eggshells, no second-guessing myself, no feeling like I was constantly failing some unspoken test. "Are you seeing anyone?" Margaret asks gently. She's asked this question for 6 months now, always with the same careful hopefulness. "Actually, yes," I reply. "Her name's Sarah. She's a paralegal at Goldman & Associates. Nothing too serious yet, but—" I pause, searching for the right words. "I'm open to possibilities again." David nods approvingly. "Good," he says. "You deserve happiness, Andrew. You deserve better than what our daughter gave you." They never say Rachel's name directly anymore. She's always our daughter, or she, or simply absent from conversation entirely. I know from David's carefully neutral tone that they still haven't reconciled with her. Margaret's silence on the subject speaks volumes about wounds that haven't healed and forgiveness that isn't coming. I don't ask about Rachel anymore. I don't need to know how she's doing, where she's living, whether she's found someone new or remains alone with her choices. That part of my life is closed, sealed off like a room in a house I no longer visit. Later that evening, I sit on my renovated deck with a glass of good scotch, watching the sunset paint my backyard in shades of gold and amber. The kitchen renovation turned out perfectly. Marble countertops, custom cabinets, professional-grade appliances, everything Rachel had dreamed of, built after she was gone to enjoy it. Sometimes I think about the woman I thought I married. The one who laughed at my jokes, planned beach vacations, talked about our future with stars in her eyes. I wonder if she was ever real, or if I was just too in love to see the truth underneath the performance. I don't feel anger anymore. That burned out months ago, leaving only ash and acceptance. I don't feel satisfaction either. There's no joy in watching someone self-destruct, even someone who betrayed everything we'd built together. I feel peace. The kind of deep, settled peace that comes from surviving betrayal and discovering you're stronger than you thought. The prenup Rachel insisted on became the instrument of her own destruction, a perfect example of cosmic justice that I couldn't have planned if I'd tried. Some people say forgiveness sets you free. They're wrong. Boundaries set you free. Consequences set you free. I'm free because I refused to let her betrayal define me. She chose her path. I chose mine. And I'm finally at peace with that. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.